No matter how clean or detailed the original MIDI is, translating that music into notation isn't always a perfect one-to-one process. So after cleaning up the MIDI and organizing it, what I refer to as the sketch, there are always some nuances that need to be resolved. To me, modern orchestration often feels like solving a puzzle. So you have all the pieces, you know the final picture, and it's your job to fit those pieces together in a way that creates something beautiful and functional. So let's take a look at a practical example. The composer Jonathan Highlander has a clear vision of how the music should sound, and it works perfectly in the mock-up, right? But when it's time to translate this into a live orchestra, some adjustments need to be made to ensure it's readable but also practical for the musicians in the recording session. So let's dive into the technical details. We start big, tempo. The original tempo is quarter equals 134, with a tempo change at bar 73 to quarter equals 119. So as is, this wouldn't work well during the session. And in fact, in this version, I've already made a couple of adjustments to the sketch compared to the original. So now let's really take a look at the very original MIDI. So in Jonathan's version, there was no tempo change, but there was a meter change, a 9/8 time signature just for that bar. So the first step was to convert this section into 4/4, which makes everything easier to read. Now to smooth the transition, I also adjusted the tempo, slowing it down to quarter 119 only for that bar. But even with this adjustment, the tempo change still felt too drastic. So I had to call Jonathan and we discussed the issue. We watched the footage together and settled on slowing the tempo down to quarter equals 133, but from bar 62, and then returning to quarter 134 at bar 77. This keeps everything in sync with the picture while making the cue more playable for the musicians, and giving the composer, the director and producers, that peace of mind that the session will go smoothly. Now, let's look at the strings. At bar 74, we have too many elements to fit into one section. We got these arpeggios in octaves, a staccato chord, tremolos, the viola part is playing the same as the violin too. Then we have the whole notes in the cello and the bass, and then more staccato notes in the bass. Fast arpeggios on strings can be tricky, especially when you also have these big jumps, like the one from F to the high B flat. So in this case, I decided to move the arpeggios to the woodwinds where they fit better, and the woodwinds already had this. So now the strings play just the tremolos, and I adjusted the voicings to create a smoother landing after bar 73. This allows the strings to shine, delivering a fuller, more powerful sound. I also adjusted the brass voicings to make them more idiomatic, getting the best sound out of the players. For example, I added falls on the trumpets and trombones, which gives it a bit of a big band flavor. And this works very well with the woodwind arpeggio that gives the cue a more dynamic feel. Now for these rising scales in the next section, I remove the high octave, which is already covered by the piccolo and the flute, and had the violins play in unison for more power and playability. I also brought in the cello and bass to support the low brass, adding more depth to the low end. Along with this, I cleaned up the rhythms, added the proper articulations and dynamics, and provided the right instructions for the players. The goal here is to respect the composer's original vision, stay true to the mock-up, and ensure that everything is playable and sonically powerful. Now, let's hear the final result.